The morning sun painted the desert hills in shades of gold and crimson when Sarah first saw the Apache warrior. She had been walking for 3 days since escaping the slave traders who captured her wagon train near Santa Fe. Her dress was torn, her feet bleeding through worn boots, but she kept moving forward. The fear of being dragged back to those men drove her harder than thirst or hunger. Sarah clutched the small water bottle she had stolen during her escape. Only a few drops remained, but she rationed them carefully. Her blonde hair hung in tangled strands around her face, and dirt covered her pale skin. She looked nothing like the merchant's daughter who had left Missouri 6 months ago, with dreams of starting fresh in California. The Apache appeared without warning on a ridge above her. One moment the rocks were empty, the next a tall figure stood silhouetted against the sky. Sarah froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had heard terrible stories about Apache warriors, but this man seemed different. He sat perfectly still on his horse, watching her with dark eyes that seemed to see everything. His name was Ayanna, though Sarah did not know this yet. He had been tracking the slave traders for 2 days, following their trail of broken wagon parts and scattered belongings. The white men had taken 3 Apache women from his village during a night raid. Ayanna planned to get them back, but finding this lost woman changed his plans. Sarah tried to run, but her weak legs betrayed her. She stumbled and fell hard on the rocky ground, scraping her palms raw. When she looked up, the Apache warrior had dismounted and stood just 10 feet away. His long black hair was braided with leather strips, and war paint marked his bronze face. A bow hung across his back and a knife gleamed at his belt. "Please," Sarah whispered, struggling to stand. "I won't go back to them. I won't be their slave." Ayanna tilted his head, studying her torn dress and desperate expression. He understood more English than most white people realized. The slave traders had been cruel to this woman. He could see it in her eyes. The same fear lived in the eyes of his captured people. Sarah surprised herself by taking a step toward him instead of away. Something in his steady gaze made her feel less afraid. "Make me yours," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I'll serve you willingly, but please don't let them take me back." The warrior's expression did not change, but Sarah caught something that might have been surprise flicker across his features. She had offered herself to him, an Apache warrior, rather than face return to the white slave traders. This was not what he expected from a white woman. Ayanna knew the slave traders were only half a day behind him. They would catch this woman easily if she kept wandering alone in the desert. He also knew what they did to captured women. His own sister had barely survived such treatment before the warriors rescued her. Without speaking, Ayanna walked to his horse and pulled a water skin from his saddle. He offered it to Sarah, who grabbed it with shaking hands and drank deeply. The cool water tasted like life itself after 3 days of rationing drops. "Thank you," she gasped, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Ayanna studied the horizon where dust clouds marked the approach of riders. The slave traders were coming, just as he knew they would. They never gave up easily when they lost valuable property. This woman would bring them good money in the slave markets of Mexico. Sarah noticed his gaze and turned to see the distant dust. Terror filled her eyes again. "They're coming for me," she whispered. "They'll make me work in their camps or worse. They said I was too pretty to waste." The Apache warrior made his decision. He pointed to himself and said in careful English, "Ayanna." Then he pointed to her with a questioning look. "Sarah," she replied, understanding. Ayanna nodded once, then walked to his horse. Sarah thought he meant to leave her there, and panic rose in her throat. But instead he swung into the saddle and held out his hand to her. Sarah did not hesitate. She grabbed his strong hand and let him pull her up behind him. The horse was larger than any she had ridden, and she wrapped her arms around Ayanna's waist to keep from falling. His body felt solid and warm, and for the first time in days she felt safe. They rode hard toward the rocky hills where the terrain would hide their tracks. Sarah bounced awkwardly at first, unused to riding without a saddle, but she held on tight. Behind them, the dust cloud grew larger as the slave traders pushed their horses faster. Ayanna guided his mount through narrow passages between towering red rocks. The horse picked its way carefully over loose stones and around sharp bends. Sarah marveled at how quietly they moved. The Apache knew this land like she knew the rooms of her childhood home. After an hour of climbing, they reached a hidden cave halfway up a cliff face. Ayanna dismounted and helped Sarah down. Her legs shook from the hard ride, but she was grateful to be alive and free. The cave opening was narrow, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "In there," Ayanna said, pointing to the cave. It was the first time Sarah had heard him speak English clearly. Inside, the cave opened into a larger chamber with a pool of clear water fed by an underground spring. Old fire rings showed that people had sheltered here before. Sarah knelt by the water and splashed her face, washing away 3 days of dust and fear. Ayanna positioned himself at the cave entrance where he could watch the trail below. Sarah realized he was protecting her, putting himself between her and the men who hunted her. This Apache warrior, who should have been her enemy according to everything she had been taught, was risking his life for a white woman he had just met. "Why are you helping me?" Sarah asked softly. Ayanna was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried old pain. "They took my people too," he said simply. Sarah understood then that they shared something deeper than just fear of the slave traders. They both knew what it meant to have everything stolen away by cruel men who saw other people as property to be bought and sold. Outside, the sound of horses and angry voices echoed off the canyon walls. The slave traders had reached the base of the cliff, but they could not follow the trail higher. Sarah held her breath as the voices grew louder, then gradually faded as the men moved on to search elsewhere. As darkness fell over the desert, Sarah realized her life had changed forever. She was no longer the merchant's daughter from Missouri, and she would never be the same person who had started this journey months ago. Whatever happened next, she would face it with this Apache warrior who had chosen to protect her when he could have easily ridden away. 3 days passed in the hidden cave before Ayanna decided it was safe to move. During those days, Sarah learned more about survival than in all her 22 years of comfortable living. The Apache warrior showed her which plants could be eaten and which would make her sick. He taught her to move quietly, to read the wind for signs of danger, and to find water in places where she saw only dry rock. Sarah discovered that Ayanna spoke English better than he first let on. His father had traded with white settlers before the wars began, and Ayanna had learned their language as a boy. But he was careful about when and where he used it. Knowledge was power, and letting enemies know what you understood could mean death. "My people are prisoners," Ayanna told her on the second night, as they sat by a small fire deep in the cave. "3 women from my village. The slave traders took them north toward the big river." Sarah's heart ached at the pain in his voice. "Is one of them your wife?" "My sister," he replied, staring into the flames. 17 summers old. They took her while she gathered medicine plants near the water. Now Sarah understood why he had helped her. She reminded him of his sister, another woman stolen by the same kind of men. "We have to get her back," she said without thinking. Ayanna looked at her with surprise. White people rarely cared about Apache suffering. Most believed his people were nothing more than wild animals who deserved whatever happened to them. "You would help?" "Those men kept me chained in a wagon for 5 days," Sarah said quietly. "They told me what they planned to do with me when we reached Mexico. I know what your sister is facing." Something shifted in Ayanna's expression. The careful distance he maintained around all white people began to crack. This woman understood because she had lived the same nightmare. She was not just another white settler who saw his people as obstacles to be removed. On the 3rd morning, they left the cave before dawn. Ayanna had decided to trust Sarah enough to take her to his village, but the journey would be dangerous. The slave traders were still searching the area, and other Apache bands might not be friendly to a white woman traveling with one of their warriors. They rode double on Ayanna's horse, following deer trails through hidden canyons. Sarah had grown more comfortable riding bareback, and she learned to move with the horse instead of fighting its motion. Her body was getting stronger too. The soft merchant's daughter was disappearing, replaced by someone harder and more capable. Around midday, they stopped at a water hole surrounded by ancient cottonwood trees. While the horse drank, Ayanna pointed to markings carved into the bark of the largest tree. "My grandfather's sign," he explained. "This is Apache land." Sarah studied the symbols, trying to understand their meaning. They looked like pictures telling a story, but she could not read the language. "What do they say?" "Safe water. Good hunting. Beware the spotted sickness that came with the white eyes." Ayanna's voice held old bitterness. "That was before I was born. The spotted sickness killed half our people." The spotted sickness meant smallpox, Sarah realized. White settlers had brought diseases that devastated native tribes across the frontier. She felt ashamed of her people's role in that suffering, even though she had been just a child when it happened. They were filling their water skins when riders appeared on the ridge above them. Sarah's blood went cold, thinking the slave traders had found them. But Ayanna seemed relieved. These were Apache warriors, 3 of them riding hard toward the waterhole. The lead rider was older than Ayanna, with gray streaks in his long black hair and scars marking his arms and chest. He spoke rapidly in Apache, his voice urgent and angry. Sarah could not understand the words, but the tone was clear enough. Something bad had happened. Ayanna replied in the same language, gesturing toward Sarah. The older warrior's eyes narrowed as he studied her torn dress and pale skin. He asked several sharp questions, and Ayanna answered each one carefully. "This is Nalnish," Ayanna told Sarah. "My father's brother. He leads the war party searching for our stolen women." Nalnish spoke again, pointing at Sarah and then at Ayanna. Even without understanding the language, Sarah could tell they were arguing about her. The other 2 warriors watched silently, their hands resting on their weapons. "He wants to know why I travel with a white woman when our people are missing," Ayanna explained. "He thinks you might be a spy or a trap." Sarah stepped forward, knowing her next words could mean life or death. "Tell him I know where the slave traders are going," she said. "I was their prisoner. I heard them talking about their plans," Ayanna translated quickly. Nalnish's expression changed from suspicion to sharp interest. He questioned Sarah directly through Ayanna, wanting to know everything she remembered about the slavers' plans. Sarah told them about the conversation she had overheard while pretending to sleep in the wagon. The traders planned to meet other slavers at an old mining camp near the Rio Grande. They would combine their captives and sell them all together at a big auction in Mexico. The meeting was set for the new moon, still 5 days away. When Ayanna finished translating, Nalnish nodded slowly. This information matched what their scouts had discovered. The slave traders were definitely moving north toward the river, and they had been seen with Apache women among their prisoners. Nalnish spoke again, this time to Ayanna in a tone that sounded like orders. Sarah caught her own name in the mix of Apache words, along with what might have been directions or warnings. "He says I must bring you to the village," Ayanna told her. "The War Council will decide what to do with you. Some will want to trade you back to your people for horses or guns. Others will want to kill you as revenge for what the White Eyes have done to us." Sarah's mouth went dry, but she forced herself to stay calm. "And what do you want?" Ayanna was quiet for a moment, studying her face. "I want to trust you," he said finally. "But trust is dangerous. My people have died because they trusted the wrong white person." Nalnish called out something that was clearly an order. The warriors were ready to leave, and they would not wait much longer for discussion. Sarah realized this was her moment to choose. She could ask to be taken to the nearest white settlement, or she could follow Ayanna into an Apache village where her fate would be decided by people who had every reason to hate her. "I'm going with you," she said firmly. "Your sister needs help, and I know things about those slavers that could save her life." Ayanna searched her eyes, looking for any sign of deception. What he saw there must have satisfied him, because he nodded once and helped her back onto his horse. As they rode away from the waterhole, Sarah realized she was riding toward a destiny she never could have imagined just a week ago. The Apache village lay hidden in a narrow canyon protected by high walls of red stone. Sarah could not see it until they were almost at the entrance, where guards watched from concealed positions among the rocks. The village itself was smaller than she expected, maybe 40 families living in traditional wickiups made of brush and hide. Women and children came out to stare at the white woman riding behind Ayanna. Some looked curious, others afraid or angry. Sarah kept her eyes forward and tried to look confident, but inside she was terrified. These people had suffered greatly at the hands of her race, and she was completely at their mercy. Everything depended on what happened next. The War Council met that evening in the largest wickiup at the center of the village. Sarah sat on a woven mat beside Ayanna, trying not to show her fear as Apache warriors filled the space around them. The fire in the center cast dancing shadows on weathered faces marked by years of fighting and loss. Chief Cochise was older than Sarah expected, his hair mostly gray but his eyes still sharp with intelligence. He had led his people through decades of war with white settlers and Mexican soldiers. Beside him sat the medicine man, Nantan, whose painted face seemed to see into her soul. Ayanna spoke first, telling the council how he found Sarah and what she knew about the slave traders. His voice was respectful but firm as he explained why he brought a white woman to their hidden village. Sarah wished she could understand every word, but she caught enough to know he was defending his decision. When Ayanna finished speaking, other warriors began to voice their opinions. Some spoke angrily, gesturing towards Sarah with obvious hostility. She caught words she recognized from her time with the slavers. Words for killing, for revenge, for the pain white people had caused. One warrior named Taza stood and spoke for a long time, his voice growing louder as he talked. Sarah did not need translation to understand his meaning. His scarred face and missing left hand told the story of battles with white soldiers. He wanted her dead. He says you are a trick sent by the blue coats, Ayanna whispered to Sarah. He says all whites lie, and we should kill you before you can bring soldiers to our village. Sarah's heart pounded, but she forced herself to remain still. Showing fear now would only convince them that Taza was right. She had to prove her worth or she would not live to see morning. Chief Cochise raised his hand for silence, then spoke directly to Sarah. His English was broken but clear enough. White woman, you say you help find our stolen women. Why you care about Apache suffering? This was her chance, possibly her only one. Sarah stood slowly, ignoring the weapons that shifted in her direction. Because I know what those men do to women they capture, she said, her voice steady despite her terror. They kept me chained like an animal. They told me I would be sold in Mexico like a horse or a cow. She pulled up her sleeve to show the rope burns on her wrists, still raw and painful. I escaped, but your women cannot. They need warriors to free them, and I know where those men are going. The medicine man Nantan leaned forward, studying her scars with interested eyes. He spoke to the chief in rapid Apache, pointing at Sarah's wounds and nodding thoughtfully. Nantan says the marks on your arms speak truth. Chief Cochise translated. But words are wind. How we know you not lead us into trap? Sarah had expected this question. Because if I wanted to trap you, I would have stayed with the slave traders and led them here. Instead, I ran away and asked Ayanna for protection. She looked around the circle of warriors, meeting each pair of dark eyes that stared at her. I have nowhere else to go. My family is dead, killed in the same raid that captured me. The white settlements will not take me back because I have been with Apache people. You are my only hope for survival. This admission caused murmurs around the fire. Sarah had just told them she was completely dependent on their mercy, with no other options. It was either brave or foolish, and she was not sure which. Young Naiche, Koshisa's son, spoke up from across the fire. What if she speaks truth, father? The slave traders took Ayanna's sister and 2 other women. If this white woman can help us find them, should we not listen? Taza spat into the fire, making it hiss and spark. The white eyes have taken our land, killed our children, broken every promise they made. Why should this one be different? Because she chose to trust us when she could have run to the bluecoats, Ayanna said firmly. She put her life in Apache hands instead of white hands. That means something. The debate continued for an hour. Sarah listened to voices rise and fall, knowing her fate hung on words she could not understand. Some warriors seemed to support giving her a chance. Others wanted her killed immediately. The decision would ultimately rest with Chief Cochise. Finally, the chief stood and the arguing stopped. He looked at Sarah for a long moment, then spoke in English so she would understand every word. You will prove your words with actions. Tomorrow you guide us to the place where slave traders meet. If you speak truth and we find our women, you may stay with Apache people. If you lie or lead us into danger, Taza will have his wish. Sarah nodded, relief flooding through her despite the deadly conditions. I understand. I will not fail you. One more thing, Cochise continued. While you are with us, you belong to Ayanna. He found you, he brought you here, he speaks for you. If you betray him, you betray all of us. The chief's words sent whispers around the fire. Sarah realized she had just been formally placed under Ayanna's protection, making her his responsibility in the eyes of the tribe. If she proved treacherous, his honor would be damaged along with hers. Ayanna met her eyes across the fire and nodded once. He had accepted responsibility for her actions, trusting that she would not make him regret his decision. The weight of that trust settled on Sarah's shoulders like a heavy blanket. As the council broke up, warriors drifted away to prepare for tomorrow's mission. Sarah remained sitting by the dying fire, overwhelmed by everything that had happened. A week ago, she had been a merchant's daughter traveling to California. Now she was under the protection of an Apache warrior, preparing to help rescue kidnapped women from slave traders. Ayana approached and sat beside her on the mat. "Are you afraid?" he asked quietly. "Terrified," Sarah admitted, "but also grateful. You saved my life twice now, once from the slavers and once from your own people. Do not thank me yet," Ayana warned. "Tomorrow will test whether you are truly with us or against us. Some of the warriors still hope you will prove false so they can kill you with honor." Sarah studied his profile in the firelight. "And what do you hope?" "I hope my sister is alive and that you can help us bring her home," he said simply. "Everything else can wait until after that." An older Apache woman approached them carrying a bundle of clothes. She spoke to Ayana in their language, then handed the bundle to Sarah with a slight smile. "My aunt says you cannot travel with warriors dressed like a white woman," Ayana explained. "Those clothes will make you a target for any enemy we meet." Sarah unfolded the bundle to find Apache clothing, a leather dress decorated with blue and red beads, soft moccasins, and a headband woven with intricate patterns. The clothes were beautiful, far finer than anything she had expected. "Thank you," she said to the woman, who nodded and walked away. "She lost her daughter to slave traders 3 years ago," Ayana said quietly. "She hopes you will help prevent other families from suffering the same loss." Sarah held the leather dress against herself, feeling the weight of expectation from the entire village. Tomorrow she would ride with Apache warriors to rescue their stolen women. Success could mean acceptance and a new life among these people. Failure would almost certainly mean death. As she prepared for sleep in a small wickiup that Ayana's aunt had prepared for her, Sarah thought about the strange turns her life had taken. She had started this journey as one person and was becoming someone entirely different. The frightened merchant's daughter was disappearing, replaced by a woman who could survive in the desert and earn the conditional trust of Apache warriors. Whatever happened tomorrow, there would be no going back to the life she had known before. Dawn came too soon, bringing with it the day that would decide Sarah's fate. She dressed carefully in the Apache clothing, surprised by how well it fit and how comfortable the soft leather felt against her skin. The moccasins were especially welcome after days of walking in worn boots that had rubbed her feet raw. When she emerged from the wickiup, she found Ayana waiting with the other warriors chosen for the rescue mission. Nalnish was there, along with 5 other experienced fighters including young Naiche. They had painted their faces for war and checked their weapons with the careful attention of men who knew they might not return home. Ayana handed Sarah a small knife in a beaded sheath. "For protection," he said simply. "Do you know how to use it?" Sarah tested the weight of the blade, feeling its sharp edge. "My father taught me to gut fish and clean game. I think the principle is the same." A few of the warriors chuckled at her response, the first sign of acceptance she had received from any of them except Ayana. Nalnish studied her appearance with approval, nodding at how she looked in Apache dress. "Now you look like one of us," he said in careful English. "Maybe you lived through this day." They rode hard through the morning, following game trails that wound between towering red rocks and through hidden valleys. Sarah rode behind Ayana again, but this time she felt more confident on horseback. Her body had adapted to the rhythm of riding bareback, and she no longer feared falling with every step the horse took. The land grew more rugged as they traveled north toward the Rio Grande. Ancient canyons cut deep scars through the desert, and massive rock formations rose like sleeping giants from the sandy floor. Sarah began to recognize landmarks from her journey with the slave traders, confirming they were heading in the right direction. Around midday, they stopped at a high overlook where they could see for miles in every direction. Nalnish pulled out a small telescope, probably taken from a dead soldier, and studied the horizon carefully. After several minutes, he grunted with satisfaction and pointed to a thin column of smoke rising from a distant canyon. "There," he said to Ayana. "Someone has made camp where the white woman said they would." Sarah felt a mixture of relief and terror. She'd been right about the location, which meant the war party would not kill her for lying. But it also meant they were about to attack heavily armed slave traders who would fight viciously to protect their valuable human cargo. They approached the slavers' camp from the east, staying hidden among the rocks that littered the canyon floor. The camp was larger than Sarah remembered, with more men and wagons than the group that had captured her. As she had feared, multiple slave trading parties had gathered for the auction. Through careful scouting, they counted at least 15 armed men guarding nearly 30 prisoners. Men, women, and children of various tribes, plus a few white captives like Sarah had been. The prisoners were chained together in groups and guarded constantly by men with rifles. Ayanna pointed to 3 Apache women sitting with a group of other captives near the largest wagon. Even at a distance, Sarah could see the family resemblance between Ayanna and one of the women. His sister Itzayana was alive, though clearly suffering from her captivity. "We cannot charge them directly," Nalnish whispered as they planned their attack. "Too many guns, too much open ground. We need a different approach." This was where Sarah proved her value. She knew the routines of the slave traders from her time as their prisoner. "They post only 2 guards at night," she told the warriors. "The rest sleep heavily because they drink whiskey after dark. And they keep the keys to the chains on the guard captain's belt." Nalnish studied the camp layout, noting where the guards positioned themselves and how the wagons were arranged. "Where do they keep the weapons at night?" "Locked in the supply wagon except for what the guards carry," Sarah replied. "They learn not to leave guns where prisoners might reach them." The Apache war leader nodded thoughtfully. A night attack would give them better odds, but they would need to move fast and strike hard. Any delay would allow the slavers to organize resistance and use the prisoners as human shields. They spent the rest of the day watching the camp and refining their plan. As evening approached, Sarah felt her stomach twist with nervous energy. In a few hours, she would either be free or dead, with no middle ground between those outcomes. The slavers followed their usual routine as darkness fell. They fed the prisoners thin soup and stale bread, just enough to keep them alive for sale. The guards changed shifts, and most of the men gathered around a large fire to drink and play cards. Sarah counted the bottles they passed around, hoping the whiskey would dull their reactions when the attack came. Ayanna touched her shoulder gently. "You have done your part," he whispered. "When the fighting starts, stay hidden among these rocks. Do not try to help. You could be killed by accident in the darkness." Sarah wanted to argue, to insist she could be useful in the rescue, but she knew he was right. The Apache warriors moved like ghosts in the night, and her presence would only slow them down or get someone killed. The attack began an hour after midnight. Nalnish and 2 warriors crept into the camp to eliminate the guards silently, while the others positioned themselves around the perimeter. Sarah watched from her hiding place among the rocks, her heart pounding so hard she feared the slavers might hear it. The first guard died without making a sound, Nalnish's knife finding his throat before he could cry out. The second guard was harder to reach, but young Nietzsche proved his skill by taking him down with a perfectly thrown tomahawk. Within minutes, the Apache warriors had the keys to the prisoner chains and were freeing their people. But the plan went wrong when one of the slavers woke to relieve himself and saw shadowy figures moving through the camp. His shout of alarm brought the rest of the men stumbling from their bedrolls, grabbing for weapons and trying to understand what was happening. Gunfire erupted across the camp as the slavers fought back. Sarah saw muzzle flashes in the darkness and heard bullets whining off the rocks around her hiding place. The Apache warriors used the chaos to their advantage, striking from multiple directions and disappearing back into the shadows. Ayanna appeared suddenly beside his sister, cutting her chains while she sobbed with relief. But as they tried to escape toward the rocks, the guard captain spotted them and raised his rifle. Sarah saw what was about to happen and acted without thinking. She threw the knife Ayanna had given her with all her strength, aiming for the largest target she could see in the dim firelight. The blade caught the slaver in the shoulder, spinning him around and spoiling his shot. Ayanna and Itzayana disappeared into the darkness while the wounded man cursed and tried to reload his rifle. The battle lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours to Sarah. When the shooting finally stopped, 8 slavers were dead and the rest had fled into the night. All of the prisoners had been freed, though some were too weak or injured to travel immediately. Nalnish found Sarah among the rocks, her hands shaking from the adrenaline of combat. "You threw the knife well," he said with what might have been approval. "You saved Ayanna's life." Sarah looked toward the camp where Apache warriors were helping the freed prisoners. She had proven herself in the most important test possible. She had risked her own life to save one of their people. Whatever happened next, she had earned the right to call herself a friend of the Apache. Ayanna approached with his sister leaning heavily on his arm. Itzayana was thin and weak from her captivity, but her eyes were bright with gratitude as she looked at Sarah. "My brother told me how you helped," she said in halting English. "You are welcome in our family." Those simple words meant more to Sarah than any declaration from the War Council. She had found acceptance not through speeches or promises, but through actions that proved her loyalty beyond any doubt. As they prepared to return home with the rescued prisoners, Sarah realized she had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. She was no longer a white woman living among Apache people. She had become something new, a bridge between two worlds belonging fully to neither but accepted by both. The journey back to the village took 3 days because many of the rescued prisoners were too weak to travel quickly. Sarah helped tend to their injuries and shared what little medical knowledge she possessed. The Apache women taught her which desert plants could heal wounds and reduce fever, adding to her growing understanding of how to survive in this harsh land. Itzayana stayed close to Sarah during the return trip. Despite her brother's obvious concern about the attention this brought from other warriors, the young Apache woman seemed fascinated by Sarah's story and asked many questions about life in the white settlements. "Were you married to a white man?" Itzayana asked as they walked together on the second day. "No," Sarah replied. "My father wanted to arrange a marriage when we reached California, but I hoped to choose my own husband." She glanced toward Ayana, who rode nearby. "I never expected to find myself in this situation." Itzayana followed her gaze and smiled knowingly. "My brother is a good man, but he has never shown interest in taking a wife. The women of our village have tried to catch his attention for years." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I don't think he sees me that way. I'm just a responsibility he accepted to protect." "You are blind if you believe that," Itzayana laughed. "I see how he watches you when you are not looking. He fears you will leave when you have the chance." The idea of leaving had not seriously occurred to Sarah since the night in the cave. Where would she go? Her family was dead, her old life destroyed. The Apache village had become more of a home than anywhere else she might find. That evening, as they made camp near a water hole, Nalnish approached Sarah with a serious expression. "The council will meet again when we return," he told her. "They must decide your permanent status among our people." "What are my choices?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew. "You may stay as Ayana's responsibility, which means you are protected but not truly one of us. You may be adopted into a family and become Apache in all ways, or you may choose to leave and seek your fortune elsewhere." Sarah considered these options as she helped gather firewood. Staying under Ayana's protection would be safe but limiting. Full adoption would make her Apache, but could she truly leave her white identity behind? And leaving. Where would a woman alone go in this dangerous country? Ayana found her sitting by the fire that night, staring into the flames as she wrestled with her thoughts. "Nalnish told you about the council meeting," he said, settling beside her on a fallen log. "Yes, I don't know what to choose. What does your heart want?" he asked quietly. Sarah looked at him, seeing concern and something deeper in his dark eyes. "My heart wants to stay here with your people, with you, but I don't know if that's possible." Ayana was quiet for a long moment. "There is something I must tell you," he said finally. "When I first saw you in the desert, I could have taken you to the nearest white settlement. It would have been easier and safer for everyone. Why didn't you? Because something in your eyes reminded me of a vision I had during my warrior ceremony years ago. The medicine man said I would find my destiny through helping someone who was lost between two worlds." He looked at her intently. "I believe that person was you." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that if you choose to stay, it will not be as my responsibility or burden. It will be as my chosen partner, if you will have me." The words hung in the air between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Sarah had never imagined that an Apache warrior might want to marry her, or that she could find love in such an unlikely place. But as she looked at Ayana's earnest face in the firelight, she realized her feelings had been growing stronger each day. "The council might not approve," she said softly. "The council respects strength and loyalty. You have proven both, and you saved my sister's life. That gives you honor among our people." Sarah reached out and took his hand, feeling the calluses from years of handling weapons and tools. "Then yes, I will have you, if your people will accept me." Ayana's smile was like sunrise breaking over the desert. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "They will accept you because you have earned acceptance through your actions, not your birth." The next morning brought them within sight of the village. Smoke rose from cooking fires and children played in the narrow canyon while women worked at various tasks. It looked like home to Sarah now, not the frightening enemy stronghold it had seemed just a week ago. News of the successful rescue had traveled ahead of them, carried by scouts who reported to the village. People came out to welcome the returning warriors and celebrate the freedom of their captured relatives. Sarah noticed that several of the older women smiled at her and nodded approvingly as she passed. Chief Cochise waited in the center of the village, his weathered face showing satisfaction at the mission's success. He spoke with Nalnish for several minutes, getting details about the battle and Sarah's role in the rescue. Then he turned his attention to Sarah herself. "White woman who fights beside Apache warriors," he said in English. "You have proven your words with blood and courage. The council will meet tonight to decide your place among us." Sarah bowed her head respectfully. "I am honored by your consideration, Chief Cochise. Ayana has spoken to me about his intentions toward you," the chief continued. "Do you understand what it means to become Apache?" "I understand that it means leaving my old life completely behind and accepting new responsibilities to this people," Sarah replied. "I am ready to do that." Chief Cochise studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "We shall see what the council decides." The day passed slowly as Sarah helped care for the rescued prisoners and tried to calm her nerves about the evening meeting. Ayana stayed close, offering quiet support and teaching her some basic Apache words that might be useful during the council session. "Remember," Ayana said as they prepared for the meeting, "Apache women are not silent flowers. We speak our minds and defend our positions. Do not be afraid to show your strength." The council fire burned bright as the village elders gathered for the second time to discuss Sarah's fate. This time, however, the mood was different. Instead of suspicion and hostility, Sarah sensed curiosity and even acceptance from some of the faces around the fire. Chief Cochise spoke first, recounting the successful rescue mission and Sarah's contributions to its success. He mentioned her willingness to risk her life to save Ayana and Ayana, and the knife throw that had prevented bloodshed among their own people. Nalnish stood next, adding his own account of Sarah's behavior during the mission. "She followed orders, showed courage under fire, and proved her loyalty when it mattered most," he concluded. "I believe she has earned the right to call herself Apache." But not everyone agreed. Taza rose again, his scarred face grim in the firelight. "One brave action does not erase a lifetime of white blood," he argued. "What happens when the bluecoats come looking for a white woman who disappeared? What happens when her true nature shows itself? My true nature is to stand with those who have shown me kindness and protection," Sarah said, rising to face her accuser. "I have no family left among the white people, no home to return to, no reason to betray the people who saved my life." She looked around the circle, meeting each pair of eyes that watched her. "I know some of you will never fully trust me because of my skin color. I understand that. Your people have suffered greatly at the hands of my race, but I ask only for the chance to prove myself worthy of the trust that Ayana and his family have placed in me." Ayana stood beside her, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. "I have asked this woman to be my wife," he announced, causing murmurs around the fire. "She has accepted. I ask the council to recognize our union and grant her full membership in our tribe." This declaration shifted the entire discussion. Marriage was a sacred institution among the Apache, and if Ayana was willing to stake his reputation and honor on Sarah's worthiness, it carried significant weight with the council. The medicine man, Nantan, had remained silent through most of the debate, but now he rose slowly and approached Sarah. He studied her face carefully, then walked around her 3 times while chanting softly in Apache. Finally, he returned to his place and spoke to the chief. "Nantan says the spirits have accepted you," Chief Cochise translated. "He sees no deception in your heart, only a woman who has found her true home among people not of her birth." The debate continued for another hour, but Sarah could sense the tide turning in her favor. The successful rescue mission had proven her value to the tribe, and Ayana's marriage proposal gave her a permanent place in their social structure. When Chief Cochise finally called for the decision, only 3 warriors voted against accepting Sarah as a full member of the tribe. Taza was among them, but even he seemed resigned to the outcome rather than angry about it. "Sarah of the White Eyes is no more," Chief Cochise announced formally. "From this night forward, you are Nasha, the owl who sees in darkness. You are Apache, daughter of this people, wife of Ayana. May you bring wisdom and strength to our village, Nasha." Sarah repeated the name silently, feeling its weight and meaning settle into her bones. She was no longer the merchant's daughter from Missouri who had dreamed of California. She was Nasha, Apache woman, and this canyon was her home forever. The wedding ceremony took place 3 days later under the full moon, following ancient Apache traditions that bound two souls together for life. Nasha wore a white buckskin dress, decorated with silver conchos and turquoise beads, while Ayana painted his face with sacred symbols representing protection and fertility. The entire village gathered to witness the union. Even Taza attended, though his expression remained skeptical. Nasha understood his doubts would take time to overcome, if they ever could be. Some wounds cut too deep for quick healing. Medicine. Menantan performed the ceremony, calling upon the four directions to bless the marriage and asking the spirits to guide the couple through whatever challenges lay ahead. Nasha spoke her vows in careful Apache, the words still foreign on her tongue but sincere in her heart. "I promise to stand beside you through all seasons," she said to Ayana, "to fight your enemies and protect your people as if they were born from my own blood, to honor the Apache way and raise our children to be strong warriors and wise women." Ayana's vows were simpler, but no less powerful. "I promise to protect you with my life, to teach you the old ways, and to love you whether the sun shines or the storms rage. You are my heart walking outside my body." As they shared the ceremonial corn drink and exchanged gifts, Nasha felt the last threads connecting her to her former life snap away. Sarah the merchant's daughter was truly dead. Only Nasha the Apache woman remained. The celebration lasted until dawn, with drumming and dancing that echoed off the canyon walls. Nasha learned traditional steps from the other women, stumbling at first, but gradually finding the rhythm. Her new sisters-in-law welcomed her with warmth and teasing, treating her like family rather than an outsider. The first months of marriage brought new challenges as Nasha learned to be an Apache wife. She struggled with cooking over an open fire, weaving baskets from desert grasses, and managing a household according to tribal customs. But Ayana proved patient, and his female relatives offered guidance without judgment. Ayana became her closest friend and teacher, showing her which plants to gather for medicine and food, how to preserve meat for winter, and the intricate social rules that governed village life. Through these lessons, Nasha's understanding of Apache culture deepened beyond surface knowledge. "You are learning quickly," Ayana observed one afternoon as they worked together tanning a deer hide. "Some of the women who were born Apache do not work as hard as you do." Nasha paused in her scraping to wipe sweat from her forehead. "I have to work harder. I'm still proving myself worthy of the trust your people have placed in me." "When will you stop trying to prove yourself and simply live as one of us?" Ayana asked gently. The question haunted Nasha over the following weeks. When would she stop feeling like she was playing a role and start truly belonging? The answer came unexpectedly during a crisis that tested the entire village. A band of Mexican soldiers appeared at the canyon entrance one morning, demanding to search for stolen cattle and runaway slaves. Their leader, Captain Valdez, was known throughout the region for his cruelty toward Apache people. He had burned villages and sold captured warriors to mine owners who worked them to death. Chief Cochise met with the soldiers under a flag of truce, but tensions ran high on both sides. The Mexicans suspected the Apache of raiding their settlements, while the tribe knew the soldiers were looking for any excuse to attack. Nasha watched the confrontation from among the other women, her heart racing as she recognized the danger. Captain Valdez's eyes swept over the crowd, searching for something or someone specific. When his gaze fell on her, she saw suspicion flicker across his features. The captain spoke to Chief Cochise in Spanish, pointing toward Nasha. She understood enough of the language to catch the words white woman and reward. Someone had offered money for information about a missing merchant's daughter who had disappeared near Santa Fe months ago. Chief Cochise replied calmly in Spanish, his tone giving nothing away. But Nasha knew her presence was endangering the entire village. If the soldiers believed she was being held against her will, they would have justification for attacking. Without hesitation, Nasha stepped forward and addressed Captain Valdez in fluent Spanish. "I am Nasha, wife of Ayana, daughter of this people. There is no white woman here." The captain studied her appearance, noting her Apache dress and the confident way she carried herself. "You speak Spanish well for an Apache woman," he said suspiciously. "My husband traded with Mexican merchants before the wars began," Nasha replied smoothly. "I learned their language to help with business." Captain Valdez circled her slowly, looking for any sign of deception. "There are reports of a white woman who escaped from slave traders in this area. A woman with yellow hair and pale skin. Many Apache women have light skin from mixing with Mexican blood," Nasha said, meeting his gaze steadily. "As for yellow hair, mine was painted black with sacred clay when I married, as is our custom." The lie came easily, backed by her complete transformation into Apache identity. Captain Valdez saw what he expected to see, an Indian woman defending her people, not a white captive seeking rescue. After an hour of fruitless searching, the Mexican soldiers departed empty-handed. They found no stolen cattle, no runaway slaves, and no missing white women. Captain Valdez left with threats about returning if raids continued, but Nasha knew he had been satisfied by her performance. As the soldiers disappeared down the canyon, Chief Cochise approached Nasha with something approaching admiration in his eyes. "Today you chose to protect Apache people over your own safety," he said. "You could have claimed to be the missing white woman and gained your freedom." "This is my freedom," Nasha replied firmly. "These are my people now. I would die before I let harm come to them because of my presence." The chief nodded slowly, then did something that shocked the entire village. He removed one of his own eagle feathers and placed it in Nasha's hair. "You are truly Apache," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your courage has earned you a place of honor among us." That evening, as the village celebrated their narrow escape from danger, Nasha finally understood what Itzayana had meant. She had stopped trying to prove herself worthy and had simply acted according to her true nature. The transformation was complete not because she had learned Apache skills, but because she had chosen Apache loyalty over every other consideration. Ayana found her sitting alone on a high ledge overlooking the canyon, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "You saved us all today," he said, settling beside her. "I saved my family," Nasha corrected, "just as any Apache woman would do." Ayana smiled and pulled her close against his side. "Yes, just as any Apache woman would do. My grandmother would have been proud of you." As winter approached, Nasha felt life stirring within her body. The healer women confirmed what she had suspected. She was carrying Ayana's child. The news brought joy to the entire village, as children were precious gifts that ensured the tribe's future. But it also brought new responsibilities and concerns. A child would tie her permanently to this life, making any return to the white world impossible, even if she wanted it. Nasha found she had no regrets about this development. The baby growing inside her would be truly Apache, born into this culture without the struggles she had faced. Standing on the ledge with Ayana's arm around her, and their child growing beneath her heart, Nasha watched the first snow begin to fall over the desert. She was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the people she was meant to serve. The merchant's daughter from Missouri was gone forever, leaving only an Apache woman ready to face whatever future the spirits had planned. Spring arrived with the birth of Nasha's son, a healthy boy with his father's dark eyes and his mother's determined spirit. The village celebrated for 3 days, welcoming the new life that represented hope for the Apache future. Nasha named him Takota, meaning friend to all, hoping he would bridge the worlds of his mixed heritage. As Takota grew from infant to toddler, Nasha found herself becoming a respected voice in village decisions. Her unique perspective as someone who understood both Apache and white ways proved valuable when dealing with traders and negotiating with government officials. Chief Cochise often sought her counsel on matters involving the outside world. The peaceful years allowed Nasha to master skills she had only begun learning as a new bride. She became expert at weaving baskets so tightly they could hold water, crafting tools from bone and stone, and identifying dozens of medicinal plants. More importantly, she learned the stories and songs that carried Apache wisdom from generation to generation. When Takota was 3 years old, a delegation of white officials arrived at the canyon, seeking to establish a new treaty. They wanted Apache leaders to agree to move their people onto a reservation, where they could be more easily controlled and monitored. The offer included supplies, tools, and protection from Mexican raiders. Chief Cochise called a council meeting to discuss the proposal. Many of the younger warriors favored accepting the treaty, tired of constant fighting and hoping for security for their families. Others, led by the aging war chief Nalnish, argued that any agreement with white officials would eventually be broken, as all previous treaties had been. Nasha listened to the debate with growing unease. She understood better than anyone what reservation life really meant for Apache people. The government officials spoke of protection and supplies, but she knew they were offering a prison disguised as assistance. When called upon to speak, Nasha rose slowly and looked around the circle of faces that had become dear to her over the years. "I was born among the white people," she began. "I know how they think and what they truly want." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "They do not want to help Apache people live better lives. They want Apache people to disappear quietly, so that white settlers can take this land without resistance. The reservation is not protection. It is a place where proud warriors will be turned into beggars dependent on government handouts." Taza, now an elder himself, spoke up from across the fire. "But what choice do we have? The bluecoats grow stronger every year while our numbers grow smaller. How long can we keep fighting?" "We fight until we can fight no more," Nasha replied firmly. "But we do not surrender our freedom willingly. If we must die, let us die as Apache warriors defending our homes, not as broken prisoners waiting for white men to decide our fate." Her words carried weight because they came from someone who had chosen Apache life over white comfort. The council voted to reject the treaty offer, knowing it meant continued warfare but unwilling to sacrifice their independence. The decision proved costly. Over the following 2 years, military pressure increased dramatically. More soldiers arrived to patrol the territory, and Apache bands found themselves constantly hunted. Several smaller villages were forced to surrender when their water sources were cut off or their food supplies destroyed. Nasha gave birth to a daughter during this difficult time, naming her Ayana after her husband's mother. The little girl had her mother's green eyes and light hair, clear signs of her mixed heritage. Some of the more traditional villagers worried that such obvious white features might bring bad luck, but Chief Cochise declared the child blessed by the spirits. As winter approached, scouts brought devastating news. A large force of soldiers was moving toward their canyon, guided by Apache scouts who had been forced to cooperate after their own families were taken hostage. The hidden village would soon be discovered, and its natural defenses would not be enough against modern weapons. Chief Cochise faced the hardest decision of his leadership. He could order the village to fight to the death, ensuring that none of his people would be taken alive but also guaranteeing their complete destruction. Or he could attempt to negotiate surrender terms that might allow some survival, even if it meant the end of their traditional way of life. The decision was made for him when Dakota fell seriously ill with fever. The boy burned with sickness that none of the traditional remedies could cure. Nasha sat beside her son's bedside for 3 days, watching him grow weaker while her heart broke with helplessness. Ayana found her there on the 4th morning, tears streaming down her face as she held their unconscious child. "The soldiers have medicine that could save him," she whispered. "But getting it would mean revealing who I really am." Ayana understood immediately. If Nasha approached the military camp and identified herself as a white woman, they would provide medical care for her children, but doing so would expose the location of the Apache village and endanger everyone she had sworn to protect. "I will not ask you to choose between our son and our people," Ayana said quietly. "But I will not stop you if you choose to try." Nasha looked at her burning son, then at her infant daughter sleeping peacefully nearby. Both children deserved a chance at life, but that chance might come at the cost of hundreds of Apache lives. The weight of the decision seemed impossible to bear. In the end, it was Chief Cochise who made the choice for her. He appeared in the doorway of their wickiup as dawn broke over the canyon, his weathered face showing the strain of sleepless nights. "I have decided to surrender," he announced. "Not because I fear death, but because our children deserve a future, even if it is not the future we would choose for them." The chief's words released Nasha from her terrible dilemma. She would not have to betray her people to save her son, because the decision to seek white medicine had already been made. When the soldiers arrived later that day, they found an Apache leader ready to negotiate rather than a hidden village to attack. The surrender negotiations took place under an ancient cottonwood tree at the mouth of the canyon. Chief Cochise sat across from Colonel Morrison, a career soldier who had spent most of his life fighting Apache warriors. Between them sat Nasha, serving as translator and cultural bridge. "My people will go to the reservation," Chief Cochise said through Nasha's translation. "But we must have guarantees. Our sick will receive medical care. Our children will be fed and educated, and no Apache will be separated from their family." Colonel Morrison studied Nasha curiously as she translated. Something about her seemed familiar, though he could not place where he might have seen her before. "You speak excellent English for an Apache woman," he commented. "I have had good teachers," Nasha replied calmly, not elaborating further. The treaty terms were harsh but not impossible. The Apache would relocate to a reservation in Arizona, giving up their traditional territory but retaining some degree of self-governance. Young men would be trained as scouts for the army, and children would attend schools where they would learn white ways alongside their own culture. As the village prepared for relocation, Nasha felt the weight of ending an era. The hidden canyon had been home to Apache people for generations, and now they were leaving forever. She packed carefully, taking only items that held deep meaning and leaving behind the life she had built in this protected place. Dakota recovered quickly once army doctors provided proper medicine for his fever. The little boy had no understanding of the changes happening around him, but he sensed his mother's sadness and stayed close to her during the long journey to their new home. The reservation was everything Nasha had feared. A dusty, windswept place where proud warriors were expected to become farmers and dependent on government rations. But it was also something she had not expected, a chance for Apache culture to survive in a new form. Nasha became a teacher at the reservation school, helping Apache children learn white ways without completely forgetting their own heritage. She told traditional stories in both languages, taught practical skills that would help young people succeed in the changing world, and served as a bridge between two cultures that needed to understand each other. Years passed, and Nasha watched her children grow into adults who belonged fully to both worlds. Dakota became a skilled mediator, who helped resolve disputes between Apache families and government officials. Ayanna grew into a beautiful woman who married an Apache man, but also attended white schools and learned to navigate both societies. As an old woman, Nasha often sat in the evening sun outside her small house on the reservation, watching her grandchildren play and remembering the journey that had brought her to this place. She had started as Sarah, a merchant's daughter seeking a new life in California. She had become Nasha, an Apache woman who helped her people survive the transition from war to peace. The transformation had not been easy, and there were times when she still missed the freedom of the old days in the hidden canyon. But she had found something more valuable than comfort or safety. She had found her true purpose as a bridge between worlds, helping others navigate the difficult path between resistance and adaptation. When visitors came to the reservation asking about the old days, Nasha would tell them truthfully that she was Apache, daughter of a proud people who had fought bravely for their freedom. She never mentioned that she had been born white because that woman no longer existed. Only Nasha remained, keeper of memories and guardian of a culture that would survive because people like her had chosen love over fear, acceptance over hatred, and hope over despair. The story of how she came to be Apache was known to her family and closest friends, but it was not what defined her. What mattered was not where she had started, but what she had chosen to become and how she had used her unique position to help others find their own path between worlds that often seemed impossible to reconcile.